Busana to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
We're going to get into this talk because, it's been used as a political gimmick. People have said all kinds of things. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of it and what it actually means when we talk about economic development. But before we do that, Dennis is going to share today's proverb. He'll tell you where it's from. We love your interpretation of it.
Yes, so today we are in Cameroon. The president is Paul Biya, who's been in leadership since 1982. Talk about 44 years in leadership of the country. And it is as well a country that is rich in oil. We talk about cocoa, they have tea, timber as well, and football is one of the greatest things that come from Cameroon. So you talk about Roger Milla, you talk about Samuel Eto'o and the indomitable Lions. You just remember the Africa Cup of Nations and World Cup as one of the teams that have on numerous occasions represented the continent. But let's go to the proverb that we get from Cameroon. Even the strongest tree bends when the wind is strong. Even the strongest tree bends when the wind is strong. How would you interpret that?
Can you repeat the last?
Even the strongest tree bends when the wind is strong. How would you interpret it? What do you think people from Cameroon are telling us?
I think they're saying that the wind is when there are certain forces and certain powers that are so strong that even nature and even trees can bend. Yes.
Yeah, well said. That despite where you are at some point, you just need to be humble. Humility shows your strength as well.
Correct.
Well said.
All right. So almost out of the blue, which is what it was, is that we started hearing, Kenyans started to hear that the Singapore model is what the country, whether it's from a governance or leadership perspective, wanted to follow. You seem to say that it's not where we should be going, but that Kenya can create its own development agenda and actually stick to it. What's that?
So Singapore became independent in 1965. It was a British colony. In 1963, Malaysia and Singapore formed a federation, and in 1965, Singapore was expelled from Malaysia because Singapore is a complex country with three ethnic groups. You have the Malay, the Chinese, and the Indian population. Malaysia, on the other hand, is mostly Malay population. They also have a few Indian population. Singapore is 6 million people. Malaysia is 34 million people. So during that time, there was a lot of ethnic tension between the Chinese, Indians, and Malay. And the Malaysians wanted the Malay to dominate, and Singapore wanted a more homogeneous society whereby everybody was treated equally. So as a result of that, they split. And with very strong leadership from Lee Kuan Yew, the first prime minister, they set, actually, when they split, he cried on TV. It was so sad. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what Singapore would be like, but he focused on long-term planning and made Singapore one of the richest countries on earth. Now, there are similarities between Singapore and Kenya in that in 1965, when they became independent, the majority of people live in slums. Unemployment was very high, and there was those ethnic tensions that sometimes you see flare up here during election times. And so they set up very strong institutions. They came up with a very clear planning, and they focus on three areas to ensure that Singapore becomes a great society, which was basically housing. The first one was housing, to ensure that people don't live in slums, and housing was seen as part of a national pillar. So it was not just housing per se, but you build homes, you link those homes with roads, you create schools around those homes, but also the financing of those homes, whereby it was funded through some government money. People are contributing their pension fund to guarantee the loans, and also diaspora bonds. And then they looked at how do we build human capital around this. So all the people that were supplying these homes that were being built, these were SMEs. SMEs was stimulated to supply steel, to supply concrete, to supply sand. And so the society started to grow, whereby the housing as a pillar of national development expanded so rapidly, such that today 80% of Singaporeans own their homes. It was a strategic investment in that regard. They also wanted to create it to become a global tech country, a global port country, and a global hub between East Asia and South Asia. So and then the income moved from 500 per capita to 82 per capita today. So there are lessons that Kenya can learn from that. There are lessons that Kenya can learn from Korea as well, that was at war. And then after the war, they were given, actually Ethiopia gave foreign aid to Korea in 1962. They were that poor. And in a span of 22 years, Korea became a high-income country. For us here in Kenya, more or less the same time, we have accelerated only to become a lower middle-income country. Now the question is, what can we do to move Kenya from a lower middle-income country to a high-income country? So for me, when I listen to the story of Singapore, it's a story that Kenya wants bold decisions and bold programs to be able to move us from a lower middle-income country to a high-income country.
What would ask the question, as the story of Singapore is there, right? We hear it from a political class. But if you look at what Singapore did, look at what Korea did and how they thought about it, it was a question of, this is where we want to go. We will involve the people. We will involve the people for us to end up to the final destination. But here, the only people who understand the Singapore story is the political class. It is more of a political campaign tool other than a national conversation that would change this country from a low middle-income country, right, to a developed country. Which should be our strategy for us to change and say, while we learn from Korea and we learn from from Singapore, this is our story, this is our journey. Are we involved in that? Do we have a Kenyan story of development?
I think it's just if you look before the current moment, President Kibaki established Vision 2030, and that was our story,
yes,
and our blueprint for development, and that pushed us from low-income country to lower middle-income country. So now we need to go to the next step, and now we need policies to be able to push in that direction. And from where I sit, I see a lot of conversation going on. I see a bill being prepared and passed on to Parliament. And then you need that framework, and then you involve the population through public participation to be able to come up with what do you need to do to get there. And then of the resources that will be required to make it happen. Yeah.
So, in development circles, people say, in order to develop, you need to do what the developed did. Very simple. If that's what you want to do, that's what you're going to have to. If that's what you want to, if that's where you want to go, that is what you have to do. Is there really an intent? Because it seems to me like we can try and complicate it and we can talk about it. Just seems that there are basic things that need to be done if you want to develop. And I'm at the place whereby if you wanted to do it, you would have done it by now. But you haven't, so you don't want to. Sounds very rudimentary, but that's where I am. Unless we're able to be shown something different, then it almost makes some conversations exhausting. Because if you can't take care of some basics, then you're not going to tell me that you're going to get onto some tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 level of development. And isn't that where you ought to start?
Yes. I think that every country that has developed and has developed first you need bold decisions, and you need a very clear target of where you want to go. And once you achieve that, once the target is clear, then you work your way towards that target. And you're correct. The ways to get there is very simple processes to make you achieve that big target. Let me just give an example of what happened in the US. After the First World War, after the Second World War, 3 million soldiers came back to the US after fighting in Europe. And they didn't know what to do with all these strong male who had been fighting in the war. They're unemployed. And so they came up with a bold decision that they should be put to work and make highways. This is what built the southern part of the US. The highways and the southern were built by that. So very clear vision of what you do with the resources that you have. In our context, there's no dispute that we want to move from up to high-income country. Every Kenyan wants to achieve high-income status. The question is, how do we get there? How do you organize our society to be able to achieve that goal? We look at the resources that we have in terms of human resources. Are we investing enough on human capital? Do we have the right institutions that are able to ensure that the Kenyan population, once you leave school, you can get a job? Similar to what you see in Germany. Once you finish school, you get a job. Because the training...
Even before you finish?
Sometimes before you finish. Yeah. Because the training is so much relevant to what the society needs. I've just come from Korea. When you want to do electronics, you go out for internship at Samsung. But the people who are teaching you are also faculty, they are also employees of Samsung. They come and teach part-time, and then they do it. It's very much practical to what is happening. So we need to ensure that our education is really practical so that when our students graduate, they go for internship specific sectors, and then they get absorbed. Otherwise, you have very serious unemployment, and you have particularly many boys many young men end up just driving motorcycles. So we really need to reorganize our education. What kind of education are we giving people? We need to focus on industry. What is the link between industry and employment? And then we also have to look at what kind of agriculture, what kind of sectors do we want to focus on? Yeah, we choose a few sectors. Singapore chose external trade, that they wanted to make Singapore a port that will lead external trade. They'll focus on pharmaceutical, they'll focus on technology. Korea also focus on steel making, ship making, cars, and also mostly electronics. So they focus on that, they finance that, and they supported companies up to a certain level. And when they became global, they said, now you are global, we're going to support the second tier company. So it's a very deliberate approach to ensure that the country grows.
But you see, here's a story of a plan, right? On how we will how we will achieve our aspirations as a country, right? In Kenya, we want to have a Singapore story, yet our education, as we speak today, has not been sorted out. We have individuals who are graduating and are not ready for the market. We're not having discussions around education as a catalyst that will help us achieve the dream that we want to have. We are looking at a nation, because you've talked about US and its soldiers when they came back and how they were used because they were strong. They were put in the country to build up those highways. In Kenya, one would say, your country must be healthy. That means your healthcare must be sorted out. Because if you have the healthy, the strong, who are then able to be put to work, they will be able to push your country forward. Like Ndu said, you must fix the basics. As we journey towards our Singapore story, or the Kenyan story, the Kenyan dream, the basics on education, the basics on healthcare, the basics on living standards that are reasonable and that are dignifying people in the country. Must those be part and parcel of the conversation towards the Kenyan story?
Correct. You're asking a health question, and I'm a health expert, so I'll respond to you. So health is one of the most critical aspects of human being. And I supported many countries to reform the health sector. I worked with Prime Minister Modi to introduce universal health coverage, and in a 4-year period, they were able to cover 500 million households. So because India is the largest country on earth, and so what I see in Kenya is that before SHA, not many people were able to access healthcare because the SHA only captured people who were working, and the people who were not working had major challenges, right? Sorry, NHIF. Now SHA is new, is 1.5 years in implementation. It has a lot of issues. The same issue we saw with Obamacare. Obamacare, the first 2 years was a big challenge, but Obamacare now is one of the best healthcare system in the US. So SHA, the principle of SHA is good, that every Kenyan is covered, and for any catastrophic health consequences that we might have, or for outpatient. So the implementation is what we are struggling with to see how it's going to fit and how hospitals should be covered, reimbursed. In Korea, they are more or less the same thing like SHA, whereby everybody's covered. It's very highly electronic. Reimbursement is within 30 days. And some of my conversations with the Ministry of Health official, they say they've gone to Korea many times to learn that system, and that system is improved, and that's why now they're beginning to detect fraud. So health, we are still in the implementation phase and trying to remove the kinks in the system. We are not there yet. That's why a lot of people are complaining. But I think in a couple of years, given the principle that is being put under the technical assistance that SHA is getting, I think it's going to be a very good system.
Education?
Yeah. Education. So education, I came from the old school, whereby we used to do primary school, high school, advanced level, and the university. Now, that system was very good in terms of the teachers were very highly dedicated. We spent a lot of time on homework. The teachers didn't have to be paid. But the challenge with that system was that it was a lot of people fell by the wayside. Yeah, we start 40 people in a class and only 20 go to secondary school. And then when you go to 20 go to secondary school, only 10 go to A level, for example, and then only 5 go to university. So it became a major challenge, and many people were left behind. And so I think the transformation that we are going through now, I see there's a lot of problems, but having a system whereby you actually identify kids and supporting them on areas where they have strength, that is a very good system. The CBE system, if properly managed, is a very good system. For example, my niece, she does not like any other subject except music. She lives in the US. And in Kenya here, she would have really struggled because music is the only thing that she thinks about, she likes and all that. And because she's in the US and that was identified, she's become so good that she's going to the top-notch school in music in New York. Yeah. So our system here is now trying to figure out how do you identify what a student is strong in and supporting that so that they become successful, as opposed to the former 844 that you're given so many subjects and then you get overwhelmed. Yeah.
Some of the countries that you mentioned, I think it's interesting to look at some of these things. If you're going to just stick on Korea, for example, and I do believe to an extent that this whole Southeast Asia economic dream is a political tool that is being used in Kenya at the moment to keep people encapsulated by the idea that maybe you can be developed. But without doing the work that actually gets there, it just remains that. It remains a campaign slogan. If in the very eye of all of that, we can see some of these things not happening. Park Geun-hye was the first female president of South Korea.
Yeah.
She's currently serving a sentence. You know what? She was convicted of bribery and abuse of power, arrested, convicted, and sentenced to many years in prison because of a major corruption scandal. Lee Myung-bak, former president, was also convicted of bribery, embezzlement, and other financial crimes and given a long prison term. What are we saying? That if the fundamentals are not dealt with, these other things that we see, it becomes easy to do these other things. That you can set an education system right, that you can set your economic model right, that you can set your way of doing things right if you deal with the core issues. So let's imagine that this is not just a political ploy to keep people, focus on a particular issue. But let's imagine that it's actually a model that you want to follow. You can't build a house from the roof. At least I've never seen that happen.
Yeah.
I would imagine that you would need to start from the foundation.
Yes, correct.
So if there's something that's eating at the very core of a society, of an economy, then you need to deal with that issue. You will not develop if you have things that are eating away, at your core. So would you say, just leave it? If you're going to use that as an economic model and you're not ready to do the things that are that necessary for you to get there, you might as well leave it. Don't even try to take the girl home. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
Just everybody be in their corner.
So in Korea, 4 presidents have gone to jail.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they go to jail not because they committed the crime, but the people that they have employed,
Because
people
they are
working
the leader.
under him,
Yes.
are because they take accountability for doing that. So you're correct. The foundation has to be strong. And from what I see now, or rather from what I've just come from the diaspora after 25 years, from what I see, at least when I hear the conversations going on about moving Kenya to the next level, is that issues of corruption, issues of accountability is going to be part and parcel of what is being proposed. For instance, the National Infrastructure Fund, that for that fund to attract funding, it has to be governed in such a way that it's transparent, the information is available, and when you talk about the return on investment, it will be clear, and that the people that are running it are not people that have credibility and the people that have the experience to be able to do that, because Africa has $1.1 trillion dollars in pension fund that they're looking to invest elsewhere. But they have many options. They can invest in South Africa, they can invest in the US stock market, they can invest at our fund here. So if the first thing they look at, who are the people on this fund? Who is the CEO? Who is on the board? What is their plan? What is the return on investment? And if they check yes, 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 then they bring money. If it's yes, no, 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 they don't bring money. So it's going to be a competitive arrangement to be able to attract money from donors. So if we are not able to do that, it'll be very difficult for us to raise money.
Okay, let's take a break at this point. We're talking this morning with Dr. Patrick Osewe, and we're looking into really issues around economic development. And I'm actually of the opinion that you shouldn't be looking outside to see who you can copy, but that you should actually be doing things for yourself. So maybe we could look at ways in which that can actually be done. So let's take a break and come back and continue that conversation. It's 29 minutes to 10. Don't go away.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Model to then have these countries move on their own, and that we still had a hangover effect from colonialism, where that there were certain people who then held on to that administration and then essentially drove the thing into the ground. Because the natural progression of things is that you shouldn't be having teething problems when you're 60 years old, crying out loud. But we still seem to be stuck in that quagmire. And here we are wanting to compare ourselves to countries who did the absolute opposite. You can't compare apples and oranges. So would we be wrong to say that you should not actually be playing in this comparison game? Shouldn't. You should say, this is where I am, this is what I have, and this is what I will do to ensure that I move from here to here. Because in this aspiration, if you're not ready to do the things that those people did, then don't aspire to be there. In my opinion, and I'm stand to be corrected, is that it's formulaic. That if you want to get 4 and you have different integers, you must put a plus sign between them to get there, because it's a higher number. 1 plus 1 is 2. You can't have 3 plus 5 being 2. You have to put in the work if you want to achieve this. So can we be having a different conversation, or can we be having that conversation if we're not ready to do the work?
I think what Kenya is lucky in that we can learn from the experiences of other countries. The Singapore charted their own way forward. Korea charted their own way forward. Japan, after the Second World War, that was destroyed and became a poor country, in a 20-year period, became a high-income country. The base was better. Korea charted their own way forward, and in 20 years became a high-income country. Singapore, the same in 20 years. But now we can learn lessons from those countries. And we know that, for example, putting highways, we saw China. China was a very poor country before 1978. And in a period of 30 years, they built highways, airports, and bullet trains.
Because they had a plan, Dr. Osewe.
Yes, that's
and
what
they stuck to a plan. They had 12 sections of 5-year plans that they ensured they stuck by. I think they're in the last one. Would you believe it?
That's
that
right.
China is still in planning.
They're still going on. Yeah.
It's still planning going on.
Correct,
and that you could have people who could go to jail
Yes.
if they stepped outside of the plan.
Right.
They're deliberate.
Yes, exactly. And that's the point I'm saying, that legislation is being submitted to Parliament, right? And out of that legislation, there's a plan to come up with a long-term plan to move Kenya from middle-income country to high-income country. There are certain difficult things that we have to address, the issues of governance. Yeah, those are the issues of governance, that what happens if people deviate from the plan, and then this plan, people should buy into it, because what has happened in almost all those countries is that it's not a plan, because presidents come and go. But if you have a 20-year plan, it should be a plan where there's consensus, because that we all want to become high-income country, and that this is our plan. Yeah, the Vision 2030 was very much implemented by President Kibaki. President Uhuru came in and implemented some aspects of it, but not the whole Vision 2030. Would have been much, much further. But now we have another chance to come up with a vision to take us to first world.
Yeah, we talk about Vision 2030 and what President Mwai Kibaki did. Mainly speak highly of the man because he stuck to the plan that he had. Successive governments, like you said, President Uhuru Kenyatta, some bits of it, then left it and moved on. We're talking today about President William Ruto, and many ask, has he even looked at what Vision 2030 was? China, you step out of it, you go to jail. And all this is being read together with Africa's Vision 2063, that then again also donates what different countries ought to do, that being the African agenda. Here, as we are as a country, what will it take? Is it a question of legislation and policy that will make it mandatory for leaders to then stick to the plan, failure to which there are repercussions to that? Because we find ourselves walking out of Vision 2030 because there is no repercussions. Anyone can come in and do what it is they want, because that is the agenda, that is their manifesto that they promised Wananchi. Is that the direction that we must take?
So we must take a direction whereby there are certain minimums that we all agree on. Singapore, for example, agreed that human capital was the hallmark of their growth. Housing was the hallmark of their growth, and trade, export-led trade. Korea focus on trade, steel industry, and electronics. So we need to agree on what are the minimums that we as Kenya want to focus on, irrespective of whichever government comes. And then that becomes a 20-year plan to be able to achieve, to accelerate our growth to a high income status.
What do you think the minimum should be?
In our country?
Yes.
In our
I mean, it's Kenya.
Yeah.
I think human capital, ensuring that we get the best education that linked to industry. Second, we are a great agricultural country. So more advanced type of agriculture, agri-tech, focusing on manufacturing. We have a lot of people here that we can manufacture to supply and feed our country, and then feed the region, and then regional integration, basically exporting to Africa. I mean, Africa is growing so fast, and we just don't have enough food. We are still importing from Europe. So I think if we focus on manufacturing, we focus on food production, agri-tech, we focus on education, we can transform our society.
Everything that you talk about in terms of manufacturing, many say that there is no way anyone would ever get to a developed status without producing your very own that you then tend to export, because Kenya is a highly importing nation. We import something as little as toothpicks. One asks the question, is it that we don't have trees? We're planting 15 billion trees. What are we doing with excess that we do have? And you look at the manufacturing sector as is at the moment, and many industries in the country are lying dead or are on their knees. One asks the question then, as we look at heading to this vision of attaining this dream that we do have, what are we doing to fix what we already do have? You know, we are importing sugar, yet we have many sugar industries in the country that are lying dead. We have the pan peppers in this country that are dead. And you look at, just go back to history, what these factories, what these manufacturing plants did in these regions in terms of spurring economies in these areas. And it's no-brainer. Fix those. We talk about human capital. A lot of Kenyans have graduated, even with their masters and PhDs, have no jobs. We have human capital that we can take advantage of. So one then would look at the government and say, fix that which you have first before you start thinking of the bigger things that you want to achieve, yet resources that you do have are rotting.
I think you need a goal. You can't just say fix without a goal. You must have a bold goal, vision and goal that this is where we want to go. These are the shortcomings that we have in various sectors, and therefore we're going to fix them because that's what we need to get to our goal, right? Yeah, so, and we're not starting from zero.
Yes.
Yeah, we're very lucky that we have very highly skilled Kenyans. We have still a young workforce of average 20 years. See how we can mobilize that talent, that skill, to be able to achieve a bigger goal. So I think that for me, from where I sit, and having seen many countries with bold initiatives, I think that moving to a high income status, because I always ask, why is Kenya, if I go to any country, why are we not doing this in my country? Why is Korea like this? Why is Thailand like this? Why is Norway, why is Hong Kong like this? Yeah. So those countries, like both of you have said, very clear vision. So we establish that very clear vision, and then we see what are our shortcomings and how do we fix those shortcomings to be able to achieve that vision.
Are we able to achieve this vision and this dream without fixing our politics? Because at the center of it all is having a political goodwill that then will be able to do things right. Because we will keep saying that we have a dream, this is where we want to go. But if we don't fix our politics and individuals who see the need of playing by the law, those who look at the need to empower Mwananchi, and not in the context of the version of empowerment, but the actual empowerment of lifting Kenyans, will we be able to achieve that dream without fixing how we play politics in the country?
No, I think we must fix politics, and we have to work together as politicians, because almost all developed countries have parties, different groupings led by different people, but at the end there are certain things that they agree on, that this is what we want to do. So yes, we need to fix our politics. Yeah.
What do you think Kenya should or would manufacture for export, for sale, for profit?
There are already things that Kenya is manufacturing.
What?
Flowers. Yeah, we are manufacturing that. There's a lot of value add that, I mean, look at what the pineapples we are producing in Thika. Yeah, that's the same. You see pineapples where I come from in Homa Bay County. Lots of pineapples are being produced. The mangoes that are being produced in Ukambani.
Oh, let me give you a story about that.
Yes.
Just the other day, mangoes, farmers, they're crying. You know why?
Yes.
Because their fruit is so bountiful in terms of a harvest, but it's rotting because there's no market for it. And there's even nothing. I mean, Makueni County tried where they put up a pulp plant where they could turn the mango into pulp or juice. But now farmers, this week, are crying because fruit in bounty, bumper harvest, but it's going to rot. So I just thought I'd throw that in there as you talk about
that. Because this is so important. We need an enabling environment for a private sector to go and set up in Makueni.
It's already there.
Yeah, and then come up with a market to export. If the county and the national government can say, for Makueni, this is a sector that's strategic. We'll bring resources for farmers to do whatever they do, to produce even better what they're producing. It is processed in Makueni, and the market is already identified by Kenya, and then then it's exported. I think that, and I go to Makueni myself to buy when I pass from Mombasa, and I buy mangoes. They are so nice, they are so sweet. I see the best mango juice that you can ever produce. So I think that targeted, this is exactly what I was saying. We target a few sectors and put resources and get the market so that we have exports of some of our products.
You know, we talk about these markets, and the other day I was having a conversation with an individual who wanted to start a business of exporting avocados from the country to the rest of the world. But one thing that is difficult for him is the fact that the cost of doing business is so high. Getting licenses, and also just in terms of shipping his products from Kenya to the rest of the world is so expensive for him. It's high capital intensive venture. And one asks the question, with all these ideas that we have avocados, how are we adding value to that locally so that what we're selling is finished product? We can get avocado oil, right? We can get many other products that come from that, cosmetics and everything else. We are not thinking that direction. Like him, he says, it's because if I remain here with my avocados, I might have to give them to livestock. I'm looking at ways I can get rid of them so that they go outside. But here we have a government that would look at how many avocados approximately do we produce in the country and what can we do to that value add. We have groundnuts, Homa Bay County, Migori County, groundnut produced in that area. What do we do other than just sell in the market? Do we say we want to crush that, process that to get peanut oil? We're not doing that. So is it that we do not know, or are just not willing to do the hard work to ensure that these things do exist?
So let me give you an example of what Botswana did. Botswana, they keep cattle. That's their culture, and they decided that they want to be one of the leading meat exporters worldwide, and the government invested in terms of supporting farmers, educating farmers, putting cattle dips, ensuring that the animals are vaccinated so that they meet the European standards for meat. And Botswana is the largest exporter of meat to Europe. Now, what you just said and what she said is identifying what are those big things that we are producing that we can add value, and then consolidate all that and lower the barriers for export and identify the market for those products and then export them. So I think that intervention, the government intervention, is required across various sectors to be able to ensure that this ease of doing business to be able to make the farmer richer. Right now, you find that in many situations, only middlemen are making money. Farmers themselves are not making money. Because like mangoes you're talking about, you have 1,000 mangoes, you have no market, someone comes and says, I'll pay you 20 shillings for each mango, which should actually be at 200. And because you have no way of keeping it, you just give it away. The person comes, refrigerates, and then makes money. So you find our farmers are poorer, and the middlemen are making money. Many countries, in Vietnam, for instance, they decided that they loved coffee. They were importing coffee from France. And they decided that we must have coffee because our culture is to drink coffee. So in 20 years, Vietnam became the second largest producer of coffee worldwide. Something that they were not producing before because of very clear government policy to stimulate a sector and make it happen.
So that's where we go back to the beginning. Because if you don't have government policy, if you don't fix your politics, then you're not going to have this kind of thing happen. You won't. Because how many G2G agreements have there been? There's one between Kenya and the UAE. There's one between Kenya and the UK. There's another one between Kenya and some of the oil exporters. I mean, there's so many, but that you see that if you don't fix your politics and then you don't bring about the political goodwill for these things to happen, then it's not going to happen. And I think you need to fix things into
politics.
Well, if you don't have a leader in place who has the goodwill to ensure that some of these policies become processes, then you will never move. I think it seems pretty obvious that they become systems. I think it is pretty obvious that if you don't have that in place, it will not happen. It could be wishful thinking. Look at the stories that we've seen just the other day of how Switzerland, for example, is now being called the #1 producer of chocolate. They don't grow one cocoa bush.
That's right.
One cocoa bush does not exist in Switzerland.
because it comes
But
from...
they have the best chocolate in the
That's
world.
right,
So you tell me what systems and processes are in place for them to understand that, you know what, we can actually do this thing. Where are they getting their cocoa from? Ghana.
Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire.
Exactly.
Right.
So you tell me, the people in Switzerland, do they have two heads?
No, but this is also part of our problem as a people, because Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana can decide that we are not exporting cocoa to Switzerland and insist that whatever you want to do, come to Ghana and come to Cote d'Ivoire and bring your factories there, and we partner, we produce cocoa, chocolate, we learn from you, and then in 10 years, we will be able to do it ourselves. But no, we're just giving raw materials. The same applies to iron ore from South Africa. Iron ore, South Africa produces a lot of ore, and then they ship to India and to China, and then they make steel, and you buy 20 times the price. So yes, we have to fix our politics, but I think that in this context, at least from what I'm seeing, as having come back from the diaspora, I see a lot of energy in conversation that let's move this agenda forward. And I think that mobilizing people around Singapore or whichever country that is high income, and putting in place finance models and financing to achieve that is a good step. I mean, you can't dispute that you don't want us to be rich, but how do we get there is a conversation that we should be having.
I mean, we're having conversations, but one asks the question, I want each part of the conversation. Because these conversations, as they're being said, right, it is a conversation that it is only the political class that are having that conversation on that macro level. Mwananchi today asked them in terms of, okay, fine, we're going to Singapore. What do they understand about that term and the processes and the systems being put in place to ensure that we get there? Mwananchi is left behind. It is only a conversation on that macro level without including those who are supposed to help you implement that idea, that vision, to attain that dream. And one would then say that since a government would need taxes from its people to attain that dream, then the people automatically become part of the conversation. Do we then say that we fix our politics, right? We fix our education, we fix our healthcare, and ensure that everybody else understands the goals and the visions that we do have, so that we attain it? That we cannot just talk about it here and not down here as we lift everybody else. You reckon?
Yeah, so that's correct. And the way that policies are done in Kenya is that you start from policy and then legislation, and then you go into the population to have public participation, right?
You know, unfortunately, when you started hearing about Singapore, it was on a rally.
Yeah, it was top of roof.
It didn't start from down there. It started from that level, and it has remained there.
Things don't start from down there. For example, when President Kennedy said that he wanted the first man to be placed in the moon in 1 decade, he didn't start from down. He articulated a vision. Nobody had ever done anything like that. And then he said the vision should be a man placed in the moon in a decade. And then people now say, how do we make it happen? And what kind of skills do we need? Do we need engineers? Do we need doctors? Do we need nurses? Do we need aeronautic engineers? This is